So now, Greg, we'd like to talk about Odyssey 24, 36 through 84, and that's our 24 text D.
You see a description of the funeral of Achilles. It doesn't get better than this. And this time, we see a sequence of events as narrated to the ghost of Achilles by the ghost of Agamemnon. Go figure. Mm-hmm. And because they're already ghosts, they can talk about each other in a way that goes beyond the storyline, the narrative arc, the plot, if you will, of the Iliad and the Odyssey. Mm-hmm. They can even view each other to some degree as potential cult heroes.
Right.
And the big takeaway is how olbios, how blessed Achilles is. So we see him, Achilles, as a perfect cult hero as well as a perfect epic hero at the expense of Agamemnon. How ironic that Agamemnon, who did so much to threaten the epic identity of Achilles in mm-hmm. Iliad 1, is now the validator of exactly that status in Odyssey 24. We've come a long way. Mm-hmm. Olbios, blessed in the sense of a cult hero who is worshipped, potentially worshipped. That's why it's so important to see Achilles here as a cult hero. And in the context of his funeral, that becomes pretty clear in all sorts of ways. One of them is how big he is. You lay there so huge in all your hugeness. In the Greek, it goes megas megalosti. And no longer thinking about your feats of charioteering. It's because now you're in another world. Mm-hmm. And then as the funeral gets underway and the corpse is prepared for the funeral, I love the fact that, let's go to 47, line 47, the mother of Achilles comes and she starts lamenting Achilles. And in the context of this lamentation, next thing you know, line 60, the Muses come. Mm-hmm. And when the Muses sing, they sing in a professional kind of way, the way a professional singer would. The technical term here is thrēneîn at line 61, whereas the Nereids, the next of kin, they sing goos, which is a less formal, certainly non-professional way of singing and body movement. I don't want to say dancing because we have such a narrow view of dancing. In this case, it's swaying, but it's definitely motor activity, not just singing. Mm-hmm. It's all here. A perfect funeral. Days and nights, 7 and 10 we mourned you. Well, that's a long time. That takes longer than the entire action of the Iliad.
Oh, wow.
And then there's even this ritual of some kind of a martial dance, song and dance, I would think, that happens. And then there's a subtle reference to the immortalization of Achilles after death. It starts with line 73, where there's a mention of a golden amphora. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the god Dionysus had given that golden amphora to Thetis, the mother of Achilles, is a very important indication that Achilles' body will be immortalized after death at some unspecified time.
One thing we don't see here are athletic games, like with the funeral of Patroclus in Iliad 23.
You're absolutely right. In a sense, what has already happened in Iliad 23 is such a blockbuster that there's no need to bring in what would have been the equivalent for Achilles. So I think it's partly because the Iliad covers funeral games so well.
Right. And
that-
they're kind of, in a way, their funeral is the same, you could say. They're going to be buried
yes.
together.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's almost as if Achilles has already had his funeral.
Absolutely. Whereas the tomb, that's another matter. The Iliad does refer to the tomb, and we'll get to that in a second. But here you have a very explicit reference starting at line 80, how over these bones a huge and faultless tomb was built, and how this tomb is positioned as if it were a lighthouse positioned at a headland. To follow the translation I'm offering to you here, a headland jutting out over the open Hellespont. And it functions as a lighthouse because it must be visible, shining forth from afar for men at sea, and men at sea are potentially lost, as we're going to see later. They have to find their way. But in any case, these people who will see it are not just people in the heroic age, it's the future generations of people who will be listening to the epic of Achilles.